And welcome back, everybody. Week 7. This time we are executing projects. So as soon as we're done planning projects, the very next step is to execute them. What does that mean? It means to build it, your deliverable, whatever is your goal within scope, schedule, cost, and corporate strategy. So these are the learning objectives. Feel free to pause at any time and review them. I highly recommend it, right? This is really important because research has showed that without a doubt, the main reason CEOs failed is in poor execution. And frankly, the same is true of project managers. So we're going to talk about that in some length today. This is a summary overview of the readings in your material. So in summary, Figure 7-1 is showing the executing processes that you should be working with and what you should expect are outputs along the way. These outputs are really going to deliver in the executing process group what you need. So remember, you are the, let me go to draw, enable editing, standby. Technical difficulty here. Okay, well, you are, I will say, I'll just use my mouse. You are the project manager. This is your knowledge area, integration. So in that, you are going to direct and manage the project work and the project knowledge, right? So what does that mean? It means you're producing deliverables, you're collecting data, because you want to compare that data from your plan to the actual results and see if there's a gap. If there's a gap, you will do change requests, right? You'll update your project plan and documents along the way. This is really what's going on. And look, you're even updating your lessons learned register, your issues log, and your risk register and your stakeholder register along the way. Now, don't forget, a key part of executing is quality management. So you will want to accept a quality audit. You'll want to ensure quality assurance in that process, and you will want to make change requests if quality is not being achieved. Of course, part of executing is acquiring the resources, and then with those resources, you have to develop them into a coherent, cohesive team. The goal with the team is to create a high-performing team, right? And then, of course, you have to manage the team. You'll also, in executing, do a lot of communicating. 90% of the work that you do will be communicating. So consider that, as well as implement risk responses. Now, in planning, we identified risks. We created a response to risks. Now, as we look for triggers, you will have to execute risks along the way. Of course, part of executing your project will likely involve contract management. So you will conduct procurements, right? You're managing procurements. You're assessing the seller of the product to you that is part of your project. And of course, you're engaging stakeholders constantly. That's a good summary of it. Now, integration management, as we've said all along, this is you. This is who you are. This is what you do. You, the project manager, could really be called the integration manager. You've got to make sure all the pieces work together, right? And so to direct and manage project work, which produces a deliverable, you've really got to direct and manage project stakeholders, right? Stakeholders it's their needs we're trying to achieve in this project, and it's the stakeholders that will ultimately decide whether it was a success or not. And you've got to do that within the company culture. You're going to have to develop your soft skills. There are 4 pillars to any great project manager. This is leadership skills, management skills, interpersonal or soft skills, and technical skills. And all of them are developed throughout your career, no matter how good you get at any one of them. The main output here is just that deliverable, the deliverable that you are looking for right here. Okay? Speaking of deliverables, most project sponsors would say that the most important output is the deliverable. That's what they want to know updates on, and especially in terms of milestones. Most senior stakeholders don't want the details. They do want status of milestones and issues in advance so that they can help resolve them, right? To produce your deliverables, sometimes you will need training, right? So that's something we would have considered as an integration manager back in both cost management, because it would go into our personnel budget, and in resource management, because it would become part of our staffing management plan in order to make this project work. Okay. I've mentioned work performance data. This is what we are collecting throughout the project. We're collecting data as we build our widget. See, the very definition of a project is that it's unique and time-bound. It's unique. It's similar to something perhaps, but it's never really been done in this context, with this budget, with these stakeholders, with this team, etc. So it's unique. We want to collect data and compare that to the planned data and see if we have any gaps. And if there are gaps, we want to make changes. Data is sometimes in numbers. Data is also in a sense of observation. And I am a big fan of MBWA, management by walking around. I once worked in a 250,000 square foot warehouse, and every day I would walk that warehouse. It would take me about an hour, and it was worth it. Okay, it's a sense of observation is also collecting data. Now, a common way to summarize your work performance is in this data that you've collected. Notice I also mentioned milestones. You really want to, milestones are good for you as a project manager and your team, but really they're focused more on the details. Senior leaders, when you brief them, they are all about the milestones in a presentation, so keep that in mind. So this would be a sample milestone report, right? For reporting your work performance data. So, in fact, the baselines, as we've talked in this course, are scope, schedule, and cost. True. In the newest version of the PMBOK Guide version edition 7, milestones are also listed now as a baseline. So you have 4 now baselines in the new project management guide. As a project manager, I go nowhere without an issues log, right? Everywhere I go, I am carrying my log. Some of you are already doing it. You have a notebook with blank pages on it, and when there's a task come out or something you want to follow up on, you put a note in this book, and you put an empty box next to it, and you check off that box once it's complete. That's a form of issues log, but I keep a formal issues log, and I have all my owners do the same. When I'm walking around, if I'm at the water cooler and somebody mentions, hey, aren't you with that project? Yeah. Hey, I was thinking, great. I am ready to write down the issue. It makes them feel like I care about what they're saying. I go back to my team. Every morning I review the issues log. I make sure that somebody is assigned it as an owner, the issue. Sometimes if the issue is a risk, and we agree as a team, I will move it from the issues log, cross it out. It still stays there, and then I will note that it got moved to the risk register. Then what I do is I write the person I met at the water cooler and said, hey, great input. I appreciate your time. By the way, we've taken this concept and moved it to our risk register. Thank you very much. They appreciate the feedback, and now you've just won an ally, and it really is very little work, but it's important communication. So this would be a sample issues log. I would add to this, assigned to priority. what I expect the due date is. We come to an agreement. I'll fill it out in the morning before the morning meeting, but then we come to an agreement on who should own it and the due date and the status. And then I always, my last column after comments or follow-up is, did I communicate with the person that brought me the issue, right? It brings them in. Now, whenever I'm building something that's unique, I expect changes. Remember, I build a plan so that I won't have changes. But in reality, let's be honest, you expect changes because it's unique. So we will put change requests in. It's an output of several processes here. One is direct and manage project work, has change requests as an output. Manage quality has change requests as an output, and others along the way. So you want to have built a good change request process. This is a sample change request. It's not law. You can pause the video here, review it yourself, and consider how you might apply this in your own corporate environment, right? But it's a good form, and you make them readily available, even online, so that people want to fill it out. Don't make it too laborious that they go, I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm just moving on, right? It's like a survey. I'm busy. I don't have time for your survey, right? We want to make it easy. And then we want to implement solutions to problems. As an implementation manager / project manager, we are / a change manager. We are problem solvers, okay? And so we are implementing solutions along the way. So common problems during execution. Well, there are many, and they're far beyond this list. But what I will say is that project objectives and scope are unclear. The number one reason projects fail is that scope was either not identified or scope was not followed through until the end to conclusion. So that really is an issue. Estimates. If you don't have good estimates in a predictive or waterfall project, you have inherited risk on your project. That's why project managers insist on tight risks. No padding, right? If we got to make changes, we make changes, but we don't pad because that invites risk, right? There may be changes to the business needs or technology. And this is why we want to stay aligned with the corporate strategy, right? We are building this project to fill a gap in corporate strategy. And so that alignment is essential with their strategy that they have planned for, right? Sometimes you have unmotivated people. This is part of what you do. You use motivational theory. And this is why you do team development regularly and team performance feedback, etc. Okay? You will have to do conflict management, right? People are going to have issues. How are you going to solve them? This is all part of executing the project. If communications are poor, it starts with you. Make sure that you are spending most of your time doing that. All right? Okay, so sample implemented solution to problems, right? This is really covered nicely in the book, so I'm going to move past that. You can enjoy that in the reading. There can be issues with competence and motivation, right? Again, these are some scenarios that are covered nicely in the book, so I would ask you to look there. Conflict management is something that I like to let be solved at the lowest possible level, especially if it's not impacting the project, right? Let people resolve issues, but then you've got to know when to jump in. And when you do jump in, you want to actually do problem solving, right? Get to the root issue. Don't just smooth, don't withdraw, don't force a solution. Get to root cause and let's move on, okay? So you can avoid, you can collaborate, you can compromise, you can compete or accommodate. These are just ways to handle. And in different scenarios, some of these might actually be best. But in most of the case, you want to make sure that you are solving the issue that you are dealing with along the way. Okay? So these are some handling models, whether you're dealing with assertiveness or competitiveness along the way. Okay, so we'll come back and do more on conflict in a few minutes.